Hello all, I'm Kel Kidman and welcome up to Breaking on the Daily. And to get this out of the way, just to start off with, I'm a bit sick, I'm a bit nasally. Pretty sure it's not the coof, by the way, but you might notice that my voice is not doing so great, and I might have to cut if I have a coughing fit. But I'm fairly sure it's not the coof. It'll be fine, so we're just going to have a bit of a shorter day today. We're going to have 3 stories instead of 4. But to begin with those stories, Amazon has removed a book, an anti-transgender book, from their shelves, and they've done it under the pretense of their new hate speech policy to justify their essentially digital book burning, something that they, by the way, explicitly said in the past they would not do. This shouldn't be particularly surprising, and it shows with clear, it is a entirely clear example of exactly why you should not sell your property rights down the river for digital convenience, all right? If you are relying on Kindle or any other digital service for your favorite things, regardless of what it is, whether it be music or it's video games or books or whatnot, or DVD, movies, TV shows, whatever it is, you don't own those things unless it's somehow connected to the blockchain, like with Bitcoin or something. Pretty much the only digital thing you can own is Bitcoin. I mean, the whole point of blockchain is to verify actual ownership rather than just having vague ownership that you have over other digital things. And so, there have been other things swirling around, more rumors and that sort of stuff, where I haven't seen a whole lot of evidence for this, but I have seen the claim being made that people are having this book be removed from their libraries. This book be removed from their Kindle libraries. Which, while it may not have happened right this instant, it may not be the case right now, no matter what, because it is a digital product, and it is not actually something you own, but rather a license that you buy, thus making it essentially a service and not a good, that can happen. If you read any of these companies' terms of service, they may talk about how, it's a permanent copy of this or whatnot, but there will always be a but at the end of that sentence, and they will move on to explain why, well, in these particular circumstances, which essentially means anytime they want to, they can just remove it. Steam can do it. Kindle can obviously do it. Any service like this can do it. iTunes can. Google Play Store. It doesn't matter. Because if your account gets banned, well, there you go. All of your library goes up in smoke. How are you going to use your Steam library if you can't log into your account, That's how this is. Because you don't own these things. You're buying a license to them. They are services, not products. Even if you're buying it one time, you aren't getting paid on a recurring schedule, and just because it's a permanent thing, or at least ostensibly permanent, does not mean that it is not a service, because how it functions is as a service and as a license, because they cannot, and this is a reasonable, by the way, thing to do, because if they did not do this, then you would be fully within your legal right to copy that digital file to anywhere you want, and then use it for whatever you want. You can sell it, or probably not sell it, but you could copy it many times over. You could do all that sort of stuff. It goes back to the sort of things you would see back in the 90s and 80s with Nintendo suing, say, Game Genie. And that was lost because it was a good. I can take any one of my Switch games that's sitting right over there and copy it onto my computer, and so long as I don't distribute it and violate copyright in tow, I'm not doing anything illegal because it is something I own. But if I go into my Steam library and then I crack one of the games, just for example, that is a violation of terms of service and is grounds to actually remove my account in response. That's why you should not focus on digital products. I'm not saying that you can't buy it at all. I have an extensive Steam library and an extensive digital library on Switch. But most of my favorite games, well, most all of my favorite games, I own physically. Same goes with my books. Because even books that I own, sorry, I dropped that I own physically, like Dune right here, I also own a digital copy on Kindle. Reason being that sometimes it's more convenient to have a digital copy rather than having to pick this up and read it, particularly when I'm in a situation where I am not near this huge hardcover, or I'm in a convenient spot to go in and just read a hardcover book. That's fine. But I don't rely on it. Obviously, I have the hardcover book. I actually have 2 physical copies of Dune. I have a paperback and this wonderful hard copy right here. That's how that is. And I don't expect to have the digital copy forever, because that's not how that works. And I'm not relying on it. I have the physical copy with me. And I suggest many of you do the same. Especially when we're talking about situations like this. Because it's clear that it's becoming more and more dangerous to rely, particularly on these companies themselves, for whatever it might be. That's what it's become clear to me, at least. Moving on, however. New York AG Lolita James seeks to probe troubling Cuomo sexual harassment allegations. Now, what was I saying about the Democrats being out to get Cuomo at this point? Yeah, I feel a bit vindicated about that, because you see, there's been a lot of whatever you would call the opposite of circling the wagons around Andrew Cuomo, because most all of the Democrats have been throwing Cuomo under the bus, and it seems as though this New York AG is positioning herself to run for governor, because that's what all of this seems to be moving towards. Andrew Cuomo's done in politics. I know that's not a unique idea. It's not a unique thought that I'm having, obviously. But it is fairly obvious, and it is worth pointing out, even if you have heard it before, because that's kind of where we're at. And it makes me more suspicious of the claims of sexual harassment and assault that have been thrown at him. Now, I'm not saying that it necessarily didn't happen. I have no idea. It could go either way. But does it look like a setup? Or at least something that was meant to be timed in this way and wouldn't have come out in this way if it wasn't for some sort of political maneuvering in the background? I'm going to say no. Because even if we assume that the allegations here are true, the timing is a bit suspicious, no? It does seem that he's being bombarded with scandal after scandal, and there has been another claimant who has come forward already. We have 2. We might have a few more in the next coming days. It seems as though, and it's strange, because just as this story was kind of boiling down, trying kind of to get back to get back and go in the background, another claim comes out. And then, on top of that, you also have Biden throwing him under a bus, saying he supports an independent review of Cuomo's sexual harassment claims, sexual harassment allegations, at least according to Jen Psaki. Well, this seems like a political hip job. That's what it seems like to me. Could these allegations be true? 100%. It's a coin flip at this point. I have no idea. I think it's 50-50, honestly. But it could be that these are true claims that are just being put out now for convenience to whoever's trying to take out Cuomo. Or, the opposite, they're fake claims because whoever it is who wants to get rid of Cuomo wants to get rid of him, likely because of the grandma allegations and that sort of stuff. I wouldn't actually be surprised if we see over the coming weeks and months Governor Whitmer getting more fire for what she did, which is very similar to what Cuomo did. If she starts getting fire for that, she might be out the door too. You might see similar stories to this, very scandalous things being accused of her. And once again, it may be true, it may be not. But regardless, it seems like a political hick job. And man, my voice is really terrible. Moving on, though, to our last story. Antifa rioting. In Portland, there are still Antifa and Black Lives Matter people going around vandalizing U.S. federal buildings every day, essentially, every night. This particular vandalism happened on Saturday, where USCIS federal building, actually, to be more specific, was vandalized by Antifa and BLM. And this is something that has been dropped out of the news. There has not been almost a single story from most mainstream news outlets, including many conservative ones, about these riots. At least, it hasn't been front page news. There may have been slight coverage, but it's mostly been dropped from many of the mainstream news sources that you're going to see, and many of the alternative news sources as well. A lot of them, including independent ones. And I understand it. There have been many other stories, and frankly, talking about riots every day does get boring sometimes, despite the subject matter. But it's important to still at least remind you guys that these people are not happy with Biden. They're having a whole lot of Biden remorse after supporting him because of grifters like, I don't know, Vosh or something like that. Because these communists aren't particularly happy with the fact that they aren't getting their free money and all that sort of stuff. It's funny to see. And it really shows how much egg these guys have on their face. Because really, Antifa, communists, general leftist grifters who are supporting Biden and told all of their followers to vote for Biden have a lot of egg on their face, especially after the Syrian attacks that happened over the weekend. That's kind of been what this narrative has gone to. At this point, most people have turned their backs on Biden, including people who are not even communists, but people who are more moderate. A lot of people have turned their back on Biden because of what he's done in just the past month. Which is why I find it strange that certain people are saying, well, Republicans are in a terrible position for 2022. Or right-wing parties, populist parties, more broadly, are in a terrible position for 2022. Because that's simply untrue. We are only a month in, and it's already an absolute disaster. Biden has already lost so much support among people who voted for him and held their nose. So many people are either not going to vote next election or are going to finally see the light and actually vote for someone who's going to try to do something. That seems like what it's going to be. And by the way, that goes for both sides. Much of the monoparty, I imagine, is either going to be primaried or simply voted out in the next election cycle. That's what it seems like to me. That seems where all the momentum is, where all of the momentum is going, despite the Hong Kong totally fair election that happened in 2020. Which, by the way, no, Republicans didn't lose in every house. Whenever people are pushing that narrative, it always frustrates me. Because Republicans flipped the state house for them in 2020. They won every single toss-up house race. And they lost significantly less Senate seats than they were expected to lose. That doesn't seem too bad. In fact, for the losing House members, that's the first time that a president has won their first term and lost House seats in the same breath. It's the first time that's happened. Do you understand how utterly insane that is? It's part of the reason why, personally, I believe, the election was totally fair, Hong Kong. It's totally why it's a suspicious thing. Because it's never happened. It's an unthinkable thing. Because most of the time when a president wins their first term, they have a lot of support behind them. And when they have a lot of support behind them, so does the party they represent. Which means that in the places they win that they didn't win last time because the other president had won, well, they turn to the party that just won the presidency. But that didn't happen in this case. Or at least not by and large. For the most part, things went red in comparison to 2018. An extra state house was gained by the Republicans. So, Republicans, in reality, have almost all of the momentum going into 2022. Biden has almost nothing because the only substantial races they won were in Georgia and Arizona and the presidency. That's all they won. They won essentially 3 useful races. 3! Or 4. 4. You know, if you're really going to count Arizona and with Mike Kelly. Going to count. That's almost nothing. There were hundreds of races that happened throughout that election cycle. And they won 4 useful races and lost every other influential race. Does that make sense? No, of course it doesn't. But hey, that's how it is. And these people are continuing to try and justify polling and justify trusting it. Because that's what's inevitably going to happen in 2022. Don't be surprised when people like Ben Shapiro continue to peddle polling as a useful statistic, despite the fact that it's been completely wrong all the way through. Don't be surprised, because it's going to happen. He's still retweeting Nate Silver, as far as I know. Still follows him, despite how wrong he was. Like, just objectively. Even though, oh, no, he predicted Biden would win, and Biden won. Yeah, but not in the way that Nate Silver predicted him to. Nate Silver predicted him to get, like, 320 to 40 electoral votes. He only got 300-ish. That doesn't seem very statistically well. That doesn't seem very on point. It's not really ridiculous. But my voice is feeling pretty bad right now. I'm going to leave us off here. And wherever you are, do subscribe to my channel. I'm sorry for the knocking. This has been Breaking on the Daily. I'm Kel Kidman, and I'm out.